Hello, this is Kendra Kuhn, and I'm an Indiana State University student in the RN to BSN program. This presentation is for young children, specifically children who are very early elementary age, and it is intended to provide a basic overview of what children should do in emergency situations where they need to give first aid. And it covers 5 specific emergency situations. I have 9 different objectives for this presentation. After viewing this presentation, I would like for children to be able to, number 1, demonstrate what to do in a serious emergency by knowing how to correctly call 911 and being able to correctly do so on a variety of cell phones or landline phones. Number 2, recognize that telling an adult is one of the first steps in an emergency. I would also like for children to be able to discuss what should be kept in a basic first aid kit and to be able to explain why it is so important that they know where their first aid kit is kept at their own house. In addition, I would like for children to be able to describe what to do for someone who has a burn and to identify how to care for someone with a nosebleed. I would also like for children to be able to recite what to do to care for someone with a broken bone and to determine the different steps involved in caring for someone who is bleeding. Lastly, I would like children to be able to state 2 different things that can be done to care for someone who has been stung by a bee. Before continuing on with the rest of the presentation, I would like for all children watching this presentation to take the time to stop and take a short quiz or pretest to see what they already know about basic first aid emergencies. The first thing that must happen in any emergency or scary situation is to know how and when to call 911. Remember, it's very, very important if you're worried about somebody or you think somebody is hurt or sick, you need to first tell an adult and then call 911 if it's serious. Make sure that you know how to locate 911 or an emergency call on a cell phone. Once you realize that an emergency situation is happening, it's very important that you decide if it's serious enough that you need to stop and immediately call 911. It's also very important in any kind of situation that you next alert an adult. And once you have decided if 911 should be called and you've alerted the closest adult, the next thing you need to do is to locate your first aid kit. First aid kits look different in different houses, but they all should be a bag or a box where everything can be combined together and where it can be easily carried to the environment in which the emergency is happening. First aid kits need to have some kind of cloth or gauze material that can be put on top of a wound that is bleeding. Some first aid kits include scissors, tweezers, tape, cold packs, or hand sanitizer. So if you don't have a first aid kit at your house, it's very important that you work with your adult to start building your very first aid kit. And a lot of this material can be bought at Walmart, the drugstores, or dollar stores for very cheap. If someone has been burned, the best thing you can do is to put the burned area under cold running water for at least 10 minutes. Be sure to tell an adult and call 911 if it's serious. And don't put any cream or lotion on the burn until you check with an adult first. If you know someone that gets a nosebleed, you should tell them to lean forward and pinch the soft part of their nose for 10 minutes. Then tell an adult and call 911 if serious. It's not a good idea to have people with nosebleeds bend their heads backwards, as the blood runs into their stomach and it makes them very sick and they might puke or vomit. If you're around somebody who thinks that they may have broken a bone, then you can help them by helping to create a splint to keep the bone from shifting around or moving. And there's a variety of ways that you can make splints, and you can use anything that you find that's already at your house or in your surroundings. So in the bottom picture, somebody may have broken their leg or their ankle, and their friend or their helper used a pillow as a splint. They wrapped the pillow around it and taped it, and that kept the bone from moving or shifting. And in the upper picture, you can see that they thought they might have a broken wrist or a broken arm, and so their friend or helper put a magazine under it to hold it in place. So the splint can be made from anything that you think will do a good job of holding the bone in place. If you are around someone who gets cut somehow, you can help them stop the bleeding. The first thing you need to do is locate your first aid kit or find some material close by that you can put directly on top of the bleed or the cut. And then you need to hold down firmly, and you need to just keep pressing on that area until the bleeding is stopped or until you get the help from an adult. So be sure that if somebody is bleeding, you tell an adult and call 911 if serious. And if the area keeps bleeding, just keep pressing down on the area. It's very likely that you're going to know somebody, or that you perhaps are stung by a bee or some kind of insect. And in most cases, it's really nothing to worry about. The area is going to get red and swollen and it's going to hurt really bad, but there's some things you can do that will help. The first thing you should do is look carefully at the area and see if the stinger is still in place. And if it is, you need to try to remove it. The best thing to do is to find something to scrape it away with. So like in this example here, you see a picture of somebody using like a credit card or a debit card to scrape it away, or even just a knife to scrape it away. Once you get the stinger out, the best thing to help with the pain and swelling is to then put on an ice bag. Always be sure to tell an adult and call 911 if serious. Okay, you've completed this very short presentation on first aid for children. Now let's see what you learned. Please take a moment to stop and take the quiz again or the post test.